What's up, everybody, and welcome to a brand new episode of the 5280 podcast on the MHRT network, where all your hopes and dreams come true. I'm just kidding. But no, we thank you for joining us. We are the one and only and best fan-led podcast covering the Denver Broncos. That is it doesn't matter. Network, podcast, fat people, old people, young people, it don't matter.
It doesn't matter.
From really doesn't matter. Now, before we get into anything, we want to wish Glenn a very happy 72nd birthday. Happy birthday, buddy. I hope you're enjoying your hotel room.
I mean, hey, happy birthday to you, Glenn. I mean, hey, we're bringing the fireworks tonight. Yes. So happy birthday to you.
Give him some balloons.
That's right. Just some possible balloons, happy birthday to you.
We're going to keep finding the signals that set stuff off.
Don't
even know where it comes from. But as always, I'm your host, Mundungus Creevy, alongside my co-host, Cameron Parker, Gage Madrid. And again, Glenn Hauser, the old man in the wheelchair, is in New Jersey, I think, at a hotel, and wasn't able to get all set up. So it's okay. Happy 72nd birthday, my friend.
80th birthday. Happy 80th birthday, Glenn.
Happy 80th birthday. I wish you a head full of hair, but it's not going to happen. So sorry. How's everybody doing today on this wonderful second day of free agency?
At least this time we didn't get, Glenn, what was it, a blow up doll or whatever it was, like you got Mario? Oh, man. But no, man, really excited. Been a crazy couple of days in the NFL where a lot of shakeup has happened. The landscape of the NFL has changed over the last couple of days. And although Broncos country has been a little bit more quiet here, things have been happening without things happening, if that makes any sense. We've got a lot of stuff happening around the rest of the NFL that really, that really helps impact the Denver Broncos. So we got a lot to get into today.
And it's exciting from the Broncos perspective. It's bittersweet. You want some of these players to stay. You want some players to, be Broncos for life, right? And just unfortunately, with the way things have been shaking out in terms of like how will the contract be shaping up with Russell Wilson, there were some difficult decisions to be made. And, and those are very difficult decisions. I mean, and we'll certainly talk about that, but I'll tell you, if there's one thing that I'll tell you, is that for the first time in what seems like 8 years, the Broncos truly have a plan of how they're going to go about it and how they're going to go about it with the future. And so if there is a way that you could certainly look at what they're going to be doing, certainly seems they're going to be going much younger at the position, or certainly with what we've seen in the last few days, they're just going to sign a bunch of Texas Longhorns to revamp the defense. For what they're going to do, or they could possibly reunite an Auburn quarterback room of 2018. Certainly seems like a possibility. So everybody, if the theme of kind of like what we're going to be talking about today probably is we're just going to be living in the world of 2018.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, we're going to be covering, obviously the Broncos signings, releases, all that, but we're just going to cover everything because there were so many players that we named that we thought could be Broncos targets that ended up not going to the Broncos. So we're going to cover that. We'll cover the AFC West teams as well. Maybe not all of them because the Chiefs really didn't do much. But we'll cover them too because, that's 6 games out of the 18. So we'll make sure we cover that. But let's start at the very beginning. Obviously, last week we talked about Russell Wilson and how he got released. Did we talk about Justin Simmons last week, or was that after? I think that was after. That was after. So just in case people don't know, and if you don't, shame on you. Justin Simmons was released from the Denver Broncos, and as of now is not signed to another team, but it sounds like he is in talks with the Titans, which to me doesn't really make sense if you're wanting to go to a winning team. That's kind of a downgrade, isn't it, at this point?
I would agree.
Yeah, we talked about it before the show, that it doesn't necessarily make sense from a playoff perspective, but, we certainly know that money is a driving force of a fair amount of things. And so
You keep saying all this stuff that makes me sing songs.
But it's probably could be dependent upon that contract, and is it a? I'm not saying he could sign like the 5-year $70 million deal that he signed with the Broncos, a couple of years ago. But if it's a driving contract, certainly one that it's really hard to turn down at that point. If he does, though, you can absolutely bet, being his number one fan, that I will be copping a Justin Simmons Oilers jersey as soon as possible. Not Titans. I will be copping absolutely a throwback uniform of Justin Simmons that's an Oilers uniform.
That'd be
but to be fair, man. I'm gonna buy a Justin Simmons jersey no matter what team he goes to. Well, unless it's the Raiders. I might or Chargers.
I will.
Bill would, because he's a Chargers fan. But I like, other than the Chargers, Chiefs, Raiders, I would buy a Justin Simmons jersey wherever he goes.
Well, the funniest conversation, and it's a popular conversation, kind of like either this time of year or like even like once the Super Bowl is around. But it's like, if you were to cop a non-Broncos jersey, what would it be, right? And people were given so many answers and everything. I easily went from like CJ Stroud, Kirk Cousins, like a bunch of those options. The moment Justin Simmons left being a Denver Bronco, it very quickly went from, okay, that is exactly the route that I'm going to go. And by the way, to do a quick little stump and plug for the article, please go check out the article that I wrote about Justin Simmons and over there at Predominantly Orange. I'm back writing there over at Predominantly Orange. It's over on my pinned profile on @CameronParkerPO on X. So please go check it out. It really puts into perspective who Justin Simmons was in, at the end of the day, he exemplified what it meant to be a Denver Bronco. From day one, he exemplified being a Denver Bronco. So thanks again to Justin Simmons. He will be missed. He will be missed greatly within that organization, and more importantly, in that community. I will tell you at least that it certainly seems like the Simmons family, the entire family, will be staying in Colorado, so we don't necessarily need to worry about them moving to another state or anything like that. It certainly seems like the Simmons family will be staying in the state of Colorado.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So after that, we then heard the news Russell Wilson signs to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he goes for $1.2 million, right? So Denver's still on the hook for 37.8.
Basically 38. 38. Yeah, it's like 37.9. Yeah.
Yep. And this was the expected move all along, and multiple tweets out there have suggested that Russ didn't take that vet minimum deal just to spurn the Broncos, or in this case, help out the Steelers. He took that money because that's what the market was for Russell Wilson. A report came out, I can't recall who it was from, but it was from somebody reliable that said the Giants viewed Russell Wilson as a backup. That is very telling as to where Russell Wilson is at in terms of where the market was for him and just how the NFL views him, man. The Giants went out and signed another former Broncos quarterback who wore number 3 in Drew Lock. They decided to take that chance as sort of their insurance policy for Daniel Jones, or possibly their backup to a rookie if they go down that route, instead of the more quote unquote proven commodity in Russell Wilson. That is very telling.
Yeah.
So I want to go. No, go ahead.
I was just saying, there was always the dream. It was always the dream that we would have wanted Russell Wilson to, sign a 1-year, $10 million, $15 million deal. And if he was able to do that, you're talking about, possibly whatever the Broncos decide in terms of their cap hit this year, have it being brought down, if you will. So if they were going to do the 50, right, the 50 this year, the $50 million cap hit this year.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if he signed a $15 million deal, you're talking about the Broncos being on the hook for $35 million. And if it was 10, obviously it would be 40. So you just subtract it and do the math. Hence the $38 million almost.
Yeah. So then the other big move so we'll do the trade and then we'll go into everybody that got released. And then we'll just kind of go into free agency and who signed where and who did what. The big trade that Denver made was Jerry Jeudy to the Browns. When I was on Bill's show on Friday, I was actually excited for Jerry Jeudy to be on the team because, to be fair, the quarterbacks that he's had weren't really Jerry Jeudy type quarterbacks. They weren't quarterbacks that were going to hit you quickly, which is when he gets open the bet. Like he gets open within like 2 seconds.
Yep.
And when you have a quarterback like Russell Wilson, he holds the ball, he gets outside in chaos, and then makes a play, which isn't really a Jerry Jeudy quarterback. So I was excited to see Jerry Jeudy with a Stidham or whatever other quarterback they bring in, just because now you have a quarterback that's working in a system that seems like it's tailored for Jeudy. Precision, accuracy, progressions, timing. That's kind of the stuff that Sean Payton does. But they end up trading him, and then it sounds like Courtland Sutton is staying.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, the driving force of it all was just that Jeudy needed a fresh start. Because everything that you describe, Mike, is the things that I've been kind of banging the table for with Jeudy staying, as a Bronco, because he meets necessarily what Sean Payton is kind of asking for, in terms of he's a space creator. He likes to be in the open field. And if you look at some of the games or the last 2 games when he did have Stidham, you kind of saw it flourish a little bit in terms of him being in the middle. But I think at the end of the day, he didn't beat those allegations, once again, and they had to, move on from him. Actually, the fact that they were able to get, I will say, the top of the round quality that they were maybe on some of those draft picks and what they were able to get for Jeudy actually is a major win. To be somewhat, to a certain extent, like just on the outside of a top 100 draft pick is actually a win. And then that particular draft pick being at the top of a round is a win for the Broncos' sake. And then getting a second pick off of that is a massive, massive win. I will say I'm not 100% still confident about Courtland Sutton and him being a member of the Denver Broncos. The reason why I say that is because we don't necessarily know what the Broncos' certain plan is in terms of the salary cap and how they'll manage it from the Russell Wilson perspective. And I'm also not even convinced that, he could be a Denver Bronco after the draft, meaning that you're talking possibly a draft day trade. And again, I mentioned this a little bit before on my social media page, but it's just like over there on X. But it's like, if you're looking at it from the Sutton and Jeudy perspective, this particular wide receiver class, you can, if the idea presents itself, to replace Sutton and Jeudy in this particular draft class alone. So if they wanted to certainly do that, they could. Now, I think the thing that will create certainly another discussion at some other point is, if you roll with a rookie quarterback, it certainly would help. It certainly would help to have a guy like Courtland Sutton there, and of course, a left tackle there by the name of Garrett Bowles.
Absolutely. And that was talked about. I believe it was Andrew Mason that brought that very point up, that if the Denver Broncos were going to go down the route of a rookie quarterback, it would be best to surround him with some rookie quarterback friendly pieces, i.e. a wide receiver like Courtland Sutton, who can help bail you out of a bad situation, and a left tackle who may not be a franchise left tackle, at least in the eyes of a lot of the fans, but is, I think we can all agree, Garrett Bowles is more than capably a starting caliber left tackle in the NFL. He fills that void for the Broncos. So I think that keeping those guys, especially if we're going down the route of a rookie quarterback, just makes all the most sense for me. And then to go back to Jerry Jeudy very briefly, while I do think it was great from the Broncos' perspective to get the value that they did for him, I question this trade from the Cleveland Browns' perspective, because Jeudy is a quarterback, like we've all discussed, who is best in a quick rhythm offense, getting open quickly, getting hit quickly, and he's basically going to a Russell Wilson type quarterback once again in Deshaun Watson, who thrives in chaos.
Even if he's starting.
If he's even starting, yeah, because Jameis Winston signed with the Cleveland Browns today. And if I'm being honest, man, I think there's a legitimate shot Jameis will be starting some games for the Cleveland Browns next year because of Deshaun Watson's performance, not even injury related. So, yeah, man, I think that from a Cleveland Browns perspective, this is a very questionable move, but I'm very glad the Broncos were able to get the draft capital that they did because, yes, they could have gotten more draft capital if they traded him at the deadline, but that's dead. That's dead trade now. We can't really discuss that in hindsight. We have to take what was available to us right now, and this is what was available. The Broncos got good value for what they could get for Jeudy right now.
Yeah, I want to piggyback just a little bit too, and you mentioned it from the Browns' perspective. If you actually look at it even from Judy's perspective, here's a guy. Now here's a guy, right? Now here's a guy to where they traded him to Cleveland. Yeah, and I to a certain degree I agree with you about the fit, but maybe this was Jeudy necessarily saying, you know what, I want to be to a place where I'm comfortable. I want to be to a place where maybe I've been looking up to this particular player in my career, and I want to be, looking up to a guy like an Amari Cooper, right? An Amari Cooper, a guy that Jeudy has in essence idolized even since his days from Alabama, and so maybe Jeudy had a little bit of an influence on maybe where he wanted to go, and maybe where a place he knew that he would have some chemistry with immediately. Obviously, he loves Amari Cooper. I think that the funniest thing is when you go look at like the Cleveland Browns trade for Amari Cooper, it was exactly the exact same value for Jerry Jeudy. I think that's kind of like the funny like twist of this is that they acquired Amari Cooper for a 5th round pick.
Cowboys got fleeced,
and they acquired Jerry Jeudy for a 5th round pick. So. Yeah, it's just quite fascinating to kind of look at that angle, obviously.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so now we look at the 2023 Denver Broncos starters that are no longer on the team. So obviously we said Russell Wilson, Jerry Jeudy. Then you've got Lloyd Cushenberry, Justin Simmons, Josie Jewell. You have Troutman, Purcell, Moreau, Humphrey. They're all free agents. And then Kareem Jackson, Jonathan Harris, and Chris Manhertz got let go. It seems going back and looking at people that were on the team from last year that came back, you've got Will Lutz, and that was interesting because he almost went elsewhere.
Signed with the Jacksonville Jaguars on a 3-year deal, and then decides to return to Denver on a 2-year deal after no doubt Sean Payton calls up his agent and is like, no, please don't go. I could literally imagine Sean Payton.
Did you hear the Will Lutz interview on Pat McAfee?
I did not.
He started out with like, yeah, we had a great time in Jacksonville. We had a great run in Jacksonville. There you go. We had a great run in Jacksonville, but yeah, we moved back to Denver. But Will Lutz re-signed with Denver. PJ Locke went back to Denver. He re-signed 2 years, $7 million with a max value of $9 million. And then Michael Burton re-signed the fullback, re-signed on a 1-year deal. But we did end up losing other free agents like Josie Jewell, just signed with Carolina. Man, there's so many. Hold on, it's gonna take me a minute. There's so many names, like it's not even funny anymore.
Cushenberry to the Titans.
Cushenberry went to the Titans. Go ahead and fill in if you know, because it's gonna take me forever to search through all this.
Those are the big ones, really, for the Broncos losing guys.
Yeah, and we talked about Justin Simmons talking to Tennessee. One of the other cool things, since we've been talking about salary cap and how that gets affected by Russell Wilson, we started at like 30 mil under the cap and then signed some players, and then they ended up restructuring the contracts of Zach Allen and Ben Powers, and they cleared another 20 mil. So we're at 43 under the cap right now.
Yeah.
I think it's like 47.
Yeah, it's close to that. But I think the reason why people are speculating the amount is due to there's really only one other reason like if you're not going to spend big on free agency, the one logical, deduction of what that is, what will they do with that Russell Wilson contract in year one, right? Are they accumulating so much money that they're going to take a much larger cut, and hit with that Russell Wilson contract? So I think that's why the most logical conclusion for maybe a fair amount of people is they may not sign a lot of guys. So maybe they will take maybe that 50 million and, for that year. Or if you see more moves happening like DJ Jones, who hasn't been cut, if you see DJ Jones move on, or you do see a Cortland Sutton move on, if you see something like that, you're kind of deducing it may not be 85 in 1 year, but it certainly could be a little bit more than 50 in 1 year. And so I think that, so that's why I think everybody's kind of speculating right now in terms of that side of it. Because especially when you look at, I was going to say, especially too, it's easy to deduce that now when you see kind of the moves the Broncos have made. They've not made splash moves at all. Like,
they're probably just going to take that money, put it in the bank in a savings account, and accrue like 1% interest.
I was going to say, or like on the converse side of it, maybe they're trying to stockpile that cap to roll it into 2025 in preparation of taking the big hit in 2025. So I think that you could really look at it from either perspective, and either way I think makes logical sense, because if you stockpile it for 2025 and assume you have your young quarterback hopefully going into year 2 of his deal, then it'll make things a little bit easier to build the team around, because you have all that money that was in the bank ready to go to absorb Russell Wilson hit. So that's why I think they're going to take their medicine now to take it later, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So the first big signing from the Broncos, and there's only been what, 2?
No.
The first big signing, well, from other teams, I think there's been 2.
No, I mean, I will say that there's been, well, if you're being specific, I will say 2 big signings in terms of them being brought to the Broncos.
So the big one was Brandon Jones, coming in at safety, signed a 3-year deal with the Broncos. So now you have PJ Locke, Brandon Jones, and Caden Stearns, which, as you mentioned earlier, were all a part of the 2018 Texas Longhorns. But if we're looking at this objectively, are those options at safety better than a pairing of PJ Locke, Justin Simmons, Caden Stearns?
I'm going to defer to Pro Football Focus on this one, actually. Yeah. Brandon Jones was the 17th highest graded safety in coverage last year. Simmons was down at like 42 or something like that. I actually think that Brandon Jones might be a little bit more of a value signing here that could bring you at least maybe equal level production at a very discounted price. So I don't know, man. I think this is one of those very high or low risk, high reward signings that could really pay dividends for the Broncos if they play their cards right here.
Yeah. And I think that, let me just preface this way. You can't replace Justin Simmons. No. Just in general, you can't replace Justin Simmons. That's how good he is. There's a reason why he's won or racked up, a couple Pro Bowls. Should have been more. Let's just be honest. There should have been more Pro Bowls there. But a 4-time All-Pro, 3-time, good guy award winner from the Denver Broncos, obviously a multi-Walter Payton Man of the Year. You can't replace a guy like that in the locker room. You can't replace a guy like that even on the field. But what I think you can do financially, you hear it being thrown around a little bit in terms of baseball, but I think that what the Broncos could certainly do financially is maybe replace a Justin Simmons by adding 2 different safeties. And that's where you look at the guys of a PJ Locke and a Brandon Jones. So Turner Yell, I believe, is still on the team. The question is more so, as we're having this conversation on March 12th, will he be on the Broncos roster come week 1? That's really the question, that probably we should be asking is, will he be on the roster come week 1? But as far as, for that, I mean, Brandon Jones, like, the thing that I'm so fascinated about with him is the idea of versatility, right? He can play pretty much anywhere. He's played in the box. He's played high safety. He's played strong safety. He's a thumper. Like, he's played new, and I'm not even going to speculate necessarily from the Caden Stearns even perspective, because with the way the Broncos are rolling out from this is that they want maybe the best chemistry they possibly can in that safety room, which, one, again, this is a huge kudos to Jim Leonhard. If you want to get rolling a little bit with that safety room in year one, there's no better way to do it than having literally 3 safeties on your back end who have played with one another at one point or twice, at one point with the University of Texas. So again, like PJ Locke, Caden Stearns, and Brandon Jones all have familiarity with playing with one another at the University of Texas. So like when you're looking at it just simply from that alone should give you enough confidence going forward that the fact that these guys, even if they haven't played with one another since college, that should be at least giving you the confidence that, man, that kind of trio with what they can possibly, work with, and how aggressive a guy like a Jim Leonhard is, it makes me really, really excited for the possibility of what they can do with that kind of trio.
Mm-hmm. And when it comes to somebody like a Brandon Jones, I was speaking with the co-hosts of Miami Dolphins Syndicate, trying to get some information as to what Brandon Jones may bring to the Denver Broncos. And throughout the first several years of his career under the Brian Flores regime, he was more of a blitzing thumper kind of player. Yet when you compare it to the last couple of years when they've gone with more of this Fangio style defense, he really is been used a lot more back in coverage as kind of more of like a coverage dime player. So I do think that Brandon Jones brings versatility that the Denver Broncos really like. And we've already seen that PJ Locke brings a similar kind of versatility as well. So I think that the Broncos can see sort of like a symbiotic relationship between those two players where you can use them in almost interchangeable roles and not have to worry too much about, okay, one guy can do this well, but the other guy can't really do this well. Each guy can do almost the same thing and perform it at a high level. So I think that's also some of the logic as to why they made that signing.
And one of the things that I was going to say too, to piggyback off of that, is one of the most frustrating things about an offensive coordinator is knowing the fact that there are possibly a couple players that can do a bunch of different things, for you on a defense, right? And so the fact that maybe not even you have 2 guys, you have 3 guys, right? You actually have 3 guys who could do a lot of different things. And if you're a defensive coordinator who is aggressive, right? Who is aggressive with Jim Leonhard, he's going to mix and match a lot of different times with that safety look. So, and one of the things that I learned actually from from an interview that was done actually on the Let's Talk Broncos podcast with Caden Stearns is, you really don't go off of free safety or strong safety. You actually go off of left safety and right safety. So this idea of a free safety and a strong safety is kind of made up, kind of made up to a certain extent. So that kind of puts into perspective what the Broncos could be doing with Caden Stearns and PJ Locke and Brandon Jones. And let's not even put into perspective. Let's put into perspective too with Jones and Locke. They can rush the passer. Like that's the other twist of this, is like they can rush the passer and get to the quarterback. And so with the amount of sacks Locke even had in one game, and then you have Jones' ability to rush the passer, and then you have maybe an ideal rover safety who maybe fits what Tyrann Mathieu does to a certain extent, right? As that like true rover, if you will. It really is exciting for me to kind of see what that back end is. And of course, they're young. They're super, super young. We're talking about like 24 years old, 25 years old, just a very youthful room.
I got to say, I'm really excited for the blitz packages that we're going to see here, because we got Brandon Jones, PJ Locke, Caden Stearns, and we got Jaquan McMillan as well, who's phenomenal blitzing from the nickel.
Not to mention JL Skinner and what they could develop.
And then JL Skinner too. My God. And from the linebacking side of things, you've got someone like Drew Sanders who could be really good in that role. Oh my God. The blitz packages could be insane.
Yeah. So 2 things I want to bring up before we go into the next move. One, I apologize for anybody who doesn't like me eating on camera, but I don't care. I haven't eaten anything all day and I'm hungry. 2,
What you got,
I'm
mac
doing
cheese?
a horrible job because it is all over my shirt. Like I keep dropping it on my shirt because I don't want to wolf it down while on camera. Just thought I'd throw that out there. No, I think it's hamburger helper.
Ah,
I don't know. I didn't make it. The wife just brought it out.
nice.
The next big move, and this one I like, because we do still have DJ Jones on the team. I've liked DJ Jones, but I thought he needed some help, especially with him going from like nose tackle and then moving over into where he needed to be, which seemed like he got better after they made the move. But partnering him with Malcolm Roach, that we signed a 2-year deal worth up to $8 million from the Saints. And I think Roach and Jones could be pretty fantastic there in the middle.
Yeah. I mean, that was a priority. And oh, by the way, hey Gage, where did Malcolm Roach play in college?
University of Texas, baby.
That's right. And didn't he play like in like 20?
Was it on 2018?
2018?
2018, 2019? Huh. So
right, where the hell did Texas finish in 2018?
If Ty,
because I swear to God, if it was like 2-10, I'm going to be pissed.
Ty, if you are still watching this podcast, we're trying our hardest not necessarily to make it a very pro Longhorns podcast.
Clearly the Broncos are pro Longhorn though.
Yeah, well, and so if you're maybe connecting some dots a little bit, Tervondre Sweat, maybe maybe come draft time. I don't know. The thing that really gets me a little bit with Malcolm Roach and DJ Jones is, I think you're talking about a true nose tackle. I feel like with Malcolm Roach, and he's slightly younger a little bit, obviously, than DJ Jones. DJ Jones, as big as he is, the one thing you do have with Jones is his flexibility. That was one of the things that was, being shared a little bit with joining the Broncos, was his versatility, where he can play a little bit on the outside and somewhat on the inside. But he was also a rather good run stuffer when he was joining the Broncos. It kind of was up and down once he joined the Broncos. But, I think this one spells either the end of both or one of Jonathan Harris, obviously, because they moved on from Jonathan Harris. But Mike Purcell, I think that this is one of the ones where this could trigger. Maybe they're moving on from Mike Purcell. Really small deal. I want to say it was like 2 years.
Is he a free agent?
Roach?
Purcell.
Oh, Purcell.
He is.
He is. I'm just saying, like,
they won't bring him back.
Yeah, they wouldn't.
Yeah, they wouldn't bring him back.
But I want to say, what was the gauge? Like 2 years. I want to say it was like, was it?
God.
Malcolm
Roach.
What was it signing to?
Now.
It was a
2-year up to $8 million.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought. It was like $8 million. Yep.
Yeah, $16 million. So it's still a rather low deal. I mean, and I think that what adds a little bit of flexibility here is, this is where I'm curious where the Broncos are going to go, right? This is where I'm curious where the Broncos are going to go, because they could add someone else to that room, right? Because of a contract like that, they can bring someone on, that's, still there. I believe Sebastian Day, Joseph Day is on the market, who, according to Chris Thomason, did come out and say that he would not mind playing with the Denver Broncos. We also know that DJ Reader is still out there. I mean, obviously,
wasn't Sebastian Day one of the guys we were interested in before we got DJ Jones?
He is actually, yeah.
That was okay.
Yeah, but funny enough, both Sebastian Day could have been a Bronco, and DJ Reader maybe more likely could have been a Bronco had he not signed with the Cincinnati Bengals. The reason why I'm kind of going off of this whole young narrative is, when you don't have maybe as much money to work with, I would tend to lean maybe a little bit more to guys like a Sebastian Day than a DJ Reader, just because it seems like the Broncos, the way that they're going, are trying to sign guys that are 25, 26 years old. Maybe that's a sign that they want to use this free agency to groom some of from these free agents to something bigger, or that they're just, based on the cap situation, that they just want to go with younger guys and full rebuild.
Cam, I have a question. I have a question for you about Malcolm Roach, because he's sub 300. How do you feel about a sub 300 nose?
Yeah, and maybe that's to a certain extent why, maybe he replaces Jonathan Harris, not necessarily a Mike Purcell, because he does offer that versatility, the flexibility where he can play outside. And because he's so young, what is he, 25 years old? He's also got a high motor, right? He's got a high motor. So, like there's a play against the Texans in 2022 where he's chasing down a player on like a 3rd and 12, like, and he gets to him like after a 4 or 5 yard run. So, I mean, like, I think that's where it gets a bit interesting is like, he does feel like a true nose, but with him only being 290 some pounds, I'm kind of curious to see what he can work with him. And by the way, it's worth mentioning, there's no Marcus Dixon, right? Or repeating, there's no Marcus Dixon. He's not the defensive line coach. So this is now the tool that Jamar Cain gets to work with as being the new defensive line coach and is being promoted.
Well, I know Dennis Allen historically has run a base 4-3, and so traditionally that's more of like a 4-man front, and being listed as a D tackle on a base 4-3 is a little bit more conducive to being like a D end in a 3-4,
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So this is my question for you before we get any farther anywhere. One of the biggest issues that we had with the Broncos defense last year was the pass rush. We had one of the worst pass rushes in the NFL. So does Roach is he more of a pass rusher or is he more of a run stuffer?
Run stuffer.
Okay.
Yeah. And therein lies, where do the Broncos go from here? I've heard kind of like a mixed bit of things, with that Broncos room. I mean, I've heard everything from they don't like that edge room necessarily, so they're going to bring in some edge help, right? To they really like that edge room, and they're going to kind of roll with what's there. Now, I will say this: if they do roll with what's there and they really develop those guys, which is something I'm not opposed to at all. You're talking about developing a room. I mean, and we saw how good Nick Bonito was and the growth that he had with Jamar Cain, in 2023. So, I mean, like, I'm not opposed to developing it. I will say though, this is, as I was just saying, bring in like a 25-year-old, 26-year-old. This is where it wouldn't help maybe having a nice little, guy who's maybe not a Batman, but he's coming into that room and he will be a Batman, with that room, because that he's going to be the number one guy. So like, that's where I kind of turn my sights to maybe like a Yannick Ngakoue. He's not going to be your, he's not going to be your, your 18 sack guy or 18 sack guy a year, but he's going to come in and he's going to give you a consistent 10 sack season, from day one, and meaning a Yannick Ngakoue. So like, and if you're going to continue developing that room, the other part of it is too, is like, how much do they want resources put into that defensive line? Because if there's one way to make that defensive line better, is to not just bring a guy like a Malcolm Roach in, bring in a Sebastian Day, or even like maybe an Eric Armstead who hasn't even, which by the way, the San Francisco 49ers will be paying his contract. So everything we were saying about Russell Wilson, the San Francisco 49ers will be doing the exact same thing with Eric Armstead. So, I mean, if you're talking about possibly the connections and everything there, Eric Armstead, DJ Jones, Malcolm Roach, that's a pretty decent defensive line there. And now you're talking, Zach Allen and being a little bit creative with him, with how good he was able to get, to the passer. And we certainly know that he's a good run stuffer himself. Actually, he was maybe a much better run stuffer than he was getting to the quarterbacks, being with the Broncos. So I think probably I would tend more to them adding more of the defensive line, the interior of that defensive line, than them actually adding to that edge room right now.
So let's, obviously the biggest thing with Denver is quarterbacks, right? We've talked about quarterbacks. Ever since Russell Wilson. Yeah, we'll leave that one. But we've put out a lot of names of quarterbacks we thought the Broncos might be interested in that might come to Denver. And it turns out we didn't know what in God's name we were talking about, because they haven't signed any quarterbacks. I'm going to kind of go through the list of names that we thought might come to Denver. And we'll tell you where they actually went. So Kirk Cousins gets a massive payday out in Atlanta. 4 years, $180 million. Man, he got what, a $50 million bonus and like $100 million.
Yeah, 100. Yeah.
I think they said they were talking about it on Pat McAfee that Kirk Cousins has made like $330 million guaranteed between the Vikings and the Falcons. Like that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, man, his agent is insane.
It reminds me to a certain degree, not as much, but it reminds me a little bit of Sam Bradford when Bradford was racking in those, 1-year deals. Obviously he's not made as much money, as a Kirk Cousins, but I'll tell you, like, the way that, Cousins especially was able to, really maneuver that cap situation and get the contracts that he wants. And by the way, let's be completely honest and transparent here. Cousins was always a long shot. It's just the reason why we kept bringing his name up or talking about him is that who was the best free agent available that, even though he's a pipe dream, the best free agent available that fit Sean Payton? It was Kirk Cousins.
And he wasn't available long. So this had to be like right there when it happened.
Right.
Well, no doubt there have been discussions about this for weeks. I mean, there were rumors already about Cousins going to Atlanta looking for houses. Just because we're in the legal tampering period doesn't mean that there hasn't already been like a 2-month-long tampering period.
Right.
And this didn't turn into one of those things where it's like, oh, Kirk Cousins is wearing a red tie. That means he's going to Atlanta. Like, it wasn't one of those.
Right.
Get it over quick.
But there were some tea leaves and also some, things in terms that were being reported that his wife is from the Atlanta area, and so once you're kind of hearing some things like that, you can kind of trend it a little bit that, okay, this is starting to trend a little bit more to the Atlanta Falcons. But as far as a nice little Colorado tidbit here, I don't know if you guys know this, his agent is Mike McCartney. And Mike McCartney, for anybody that does not know, is in fact
brother of Paul.
No, anybody that is a Colorado Buffaloes fan, their last name McCartney should sound really familiar to you. Mike McCartney is in fact the son of Bill McCartney, and he's an agent with the NFL. And so the fact that he has Cousins as one of the players that he reps is really, really cool. So just thought I'd throw that nice little factoid in there that Mike McCartney was or is his agent, if you will.
Yeah. So let's throw out some other quarterback names. One we didn't really talk about a lot. It was a possibility, but didn't really think about it. Gardner Minshew. The only reason I bring that one up is because he
signed dagger, not gonna lie.
Yeah, a little bit. And he signed with the Raiders, which I don't really like. But I mean, did we ever really think that Gardner Minshew was an option? We never really heard his name.
Well, we didn't hear it, but I thought it was.
Yeah, we thought it was an option. I think the reason why it's a dagger was because you never thought it was on the Raiders' radar. And so yeah,
it could be a blessing in disguise though, because it could cause the Raiders to punt on a quarterback in the draft. That could really help Denver a lot.
And the Raiders are known to be doing something stupid, right? The Raiders are known to be doing something stupid, and of course, the general manager. I'm not going to comment who he signed in free agency, but they've been known to do some stupid things. The Raiders have been known to do some stupid things, and I will admit, and I will kind of, I'll do like an alley-oop to you, Gage, because I will say that, like, from the Raiders' perspective, though, I kind of subtly look at this in the way that maybe they do kind of like Aiden O'Connell, because if you talk about the pairing between a Gardner Minshew and an Aiden O'Connell, I like that just from the development side of things for them maybe to view O'Connell as the long-term guy.
Mm-hmm. And I think this also tells me they don't think they're going to get Jaden Daniels. It's no secret that the Raiders' top quarterback in the draft is Jaden Daniels. He was with Antonio Pierce at Arizona State. That pipeline has been connected for a long time, but I think this may signal the Raiders don't think they're going to be able to get their guy, so they're settling for their next best option, which is Aiden O'Connell competing with Gardner Minshew. Minshew will probably win that job, but if he doesn't perform up to snuff, then Wouldn't be surprised, if O'Connell gets the job midway through the season, and the Raiders would basically be punting on quarterback until 2025. I know that some here in Denver could see that scenario with Jarrett Stidham and maybe some other quarterback, but the fact that that quarterback has not been signed yet, Sam Darnold was probably the guy who fit that bill the most. I think that the tea leaves are starting to trend towards the Denver Broncos taking a quarterback in the draft this year.
What were some other quarterbacks? We'll talk about that in just a little bit. What were some other quarterbacks?
We'll get there. Yeah. So obviously a name that everyone's going to recognize was mentioned back to Denver, but I don't think that was ever really a thing. Drew Lock has now gone from Seattle to the Giants, where he can compete with Daniel Jones. I honestly, is that I want to see that competition because where'd that ball go? And then obviously the two that we talked about the most, Sam Darnold, Jameis Winston. Sam Darnold ended up going to Minnesota. Jameis Winston, we said earlier, ended up going to Cleveland. And it looks like, as far as Denver was concerned, there was never an offer put in on Sam Darnold. They were monitoring the situation, but once the money got up to the point where it did the $9-10 million that Sam Darnold got, Denver was out.
This is so fascinating to me because the Drew Lock in some weird way may have indirectly helped the Broncos out. Him going to New York signals to me they're going to roll with Daniel Jones, right? That seems to me like I think
what quarterback?
I think he means Chad Kelly.
I know. I was just like, what quarterback?
But yeah,
sorry, we don't have a lot of vacuums in Denver, so I don't know if he'd be all that excited.
We also would have to hold a Halloween party too. So no, but maybe in an indirect way, Drew Lock kind of helped the Broncos maybe go find a quarterback this year in the draft, because I think that them going to New York or Drew Lock kind of going there kind of signals they're fine going forward with the, Daniel Jones is their quarterback for, maybe at least one more year. And then you have Drew Lock. And then
RB fellas.
And then you have, what is it? And then you have, what do you mention? Jameis Winston, the Sam Darnold stuff. This is where it gets interesting for me, especially Minnesota, because, and I tweeted my thoughts earlier this morning. So I believe, don't quote me.
They just signed Gardner Johnson.
Yeah, they signed Gardner Johnson, and also the report you may be referencing, Biggie Bronco, came from MLF Football, and that is an aggregate site. It's a site that basically just shares news, if you will. And I think he was just trying to create, a story. But anyway,
I'll look into it while you talk.
Yeah. But as far as the Sam Darnold stuff, this is so fascinating, and I like that Gage brought up, this idea, because and Mike knows this. I've been pounding this theory that the Broncos looked and signed Jarrett Stidham for this year in mind. For this year in mind, even if it was $5 million, the 2 years, $10 million, I think Sean Payne was looking at it from this year's perspective, to where he didn't necessarily need to sign a Sam Darnold. He didn't necessarily need to go out and be aggressive for Sam Darnold. I think where it gets a bit interesting is the only quarterback, if we're being completely honest, and they didn't make an offer, but there was only one quarterback that the Broncos were very, very strong and linked to, and it was Sam Darnold. And the fact that they didn't get it done with Sam Darnold, and it was the Minnesota Vikings who did, doesn't take the Minnesota Vikings away from taking a quarterback at pick 11, but it does maybe it could read in a sense that maybe Minnesota is fine, maybe punting on taking a quarterback at pick 11 and taking one a little bit later in the draft, because they're content with signing, Sam Darnold to a $10 million deal. But just the idea that the Broncos are content the way things are rolling out and the way things are trending out, with nobody really signing in their favor in that, free agency market with the quarterbacks. I think there's a very, very real possibility.
Hi.
I think there's a very real possibility right now, the way things are shaping up within that quarterback market, that Jarrett Stidham, everything we even had speculated about him starting, I think you even said it too, Mike, at times, and even Gage, like the idea that Stidham may start week 1. I think we're all starting to kind of come to the realization that Stidham may be starting week 1. He won't finish the season, but it's really starting to feel like quarterback is the direction that they're going to go. Because the more they don't make those decisions, it's pretty obvious what direction the Broncos are going to go with. Because I will be completely honest. There is no secret right now. It is the worst kept secret right now for the Denver Broncos are interested in a quarterback. They were at the Bo Nix Pro Day. Who knows if they had any scouts at the Spencer Rattler Pro Day? I'm sure they did. At least maybe a scout here today. Also, it was today. Shit. Also. So.
Ooh, swear jar.
So I think that like. And let's not even put it past them from the fact that they also interviewed and sat down with 8 quarterbacks. The 8 quarterbacks that were at the NFL Combine, which Angel Mason even tweeted, that there are allotted slots that you have to interview for at the NFL Combine. And I want to say it was 60. They trimmed it down to 45. So you're talking about 8 quarterbacks that they sat down and interviewed with at the Combine of that 45. Now, the real push for that quarterback position is going to be those top 30 visits, right? Those top 30 visits is going to be maybe the biggest tell about maybe where they're truly going to go with that quarterback position.
So there's a name out there.
Formally?
When
do those start formally, the top 30 visits?
It's, I think, right after I want to say it's like right after their pro days.
Okay.
So like I say, it's like near the end of March to the beginning part of April is kind of like where I'm leaning or reading that is. I think the thing that gets a bit interesting is there's some players maybe like if they're injured and they can't even attend their pro day, so they do kind of like some workouts even off to the side, to basically almost like a high school recruiting video. So like, but yeah, I want to say it's beginning of April.
Hello? Yeah, I can't even. I don't want to.
Sorry.
Hello?
That's my bleacher report going off.
I don't even want to wait for the draft. Can we just do it now? Like I can't wait that long. So one of the other names, actually, before we do that, Jameis Winston. I didn't mention this yet, but there was, as far as the Broncos go, there was not even any interest in Jameis Winston, which is interesting because we thought, hey, Sean Payton, Jameis Winston connection, they know each other. They both know the offense. He can run it.
Right.
Nothing. Not even an interest, which is interesting. That's a lot of interesting. It's interesting that it was interesting that they weren't interested.
I don't want to read too much into it, but I will say this. I will say this.
They hate each other. There's a feud.
No.
It's a blood feud.
No. That's not necessarily where I was going to go with. Like the fact that, as I was saying earlier, the fact that they were most interested in Darnold, even if they didn't hand a contract offer, the quarterback they were interested in the most was Darnold. So the fact that as we're leading into this and they had no interest in Jameis Winston, I feel like that should be your confirmation without even talking about Darnold that maybe they are in fact really heavily involved in in this draft class, which, by the way, Sean Payton has never drafted a first-round quarterback. Keep that in mind. He has never drafted a first-round quarterback. So
we'll start now.
Maybe he wants to dip his toes in for the first time.
Right. And this is the class.
So there is one thing that
I do have a little bit of Broncos news real quick, though.
Go ahead.
Giants are hosting Chris Manhertz for a visit, so we might lose Chris Manhertz.
Okay.
Yep.
Man, that hurts.
Wow. I thought I was the old guy.
Okay, I think that warrants balloons.
You gotta do Yes. Okay, so there is something that I want to bring up before we go into remaining quarterbacks available. And this is something that I mentioned on the show on Friday with Bill. You look at Jarrett Stidham last season, right? He came in for those last 2 games running the offense that was tailored around Russell Wilson.
Right.
And I think that he played as well. I wouldn't say better, but as well as Russell Wilson. Same.
Yeah.
I think with Sean Payton signing him under the assumption that Jarrett Stidham would be running the Sean Payton offense, I think that there is every possibility that if we do have Jarrett Stidham starting for the year, Jarrett Stidham could have as good a season as Russell Wilson did in Sean Payton's offense instead of the offense that was tailored for Russell Wilson. Because remember, Drew Brees said that when you looked at the offense that Sean Payton was running with Russell Wilson, there was nothing familiar about it. It looked completely different. So I'm assuming, and again, I've had my I hate Sean Payton moments because
you do?
I'm a fan. That's what we do. Just like Cam had his I hate Justin Simmons moments. It happens. You go, yes. But I do believe that running Sean Payton's normal offense with Jarrett Stidham at the helm, we could still win 8-9 games.
I don't know if it would be 8 to 9 wins, but or
play like we could have won 8-9. Like I think that the quarterback play would be at the same level, if not a little bit better, just because we're running the offense we're supposed to with a quarterback that can get it done.
I think the point, and Gage has even made this point, I think a few times, but it's like maybe the reason why we say 8 to 9 wins is just from the sheer competency. Like the Broncos, even with an offense that was not tailored as a Sean Payton offense, they won 8 games. Let's rephrase that or re-mention that. Like they won 8 games. I mean, like with an offense that was not Sean Payton. So if you do, to what you're talking about, have Stidham run a Sean Payton offense, which I'm sure that they've had off-record conversations and everything else. I think that, it is definitely possible that, you will see a much better Stidham. Now, he's obviously got a very low ceiling and a very, high floor to a certain extent, I don't want to, pump him up a little bit too much.
Like a processing standpoint.
Right.
Yeah.
But is his ceiling really that low though? Like, do we even know?
Well, the reason why I say that is because to not circle back on our previous conversation, it's one of the reasons why I feel like he is the perfect bridge. Screw Jimmy Garoppolo; he's not an option.
Oh my God!
The fact that Jimmy Garoppolo was cut, you already have Jimmy Garoppolo at home. His name is Jarrett Stidham. He is actually the perfect bridge. If you actually kind of break it down, he is the perfect bridge for that young quarterback, and he may be the perfect quarterback for a quarterback that was on a roster with Stidham in 2018. On the Auburn Tigers by the name of Bo Nix.
Let's go. I think that
hey, at least it wasn't Texas. Because if you'd been like they were both on the 2018 Texas team, I would have been lower.
Okay, first off, if I did that, first everybody in the comments would have been like, "You didn't do your homework. You're an idiot." Like, I mean, not that
they both wore orange. It's close enough.
Yeah, but yeah, no, it's anyway. The connection's there. I think it's pretty easy though that. If they decide to roll with him for a full season, though, I wouldn't be surprised if they won 8 games just because of that.
And that's why I think the Denver Broncos have to take a quarterback this year, because winning 8 games and getting the 12th overall pick, honestly, was kind of lucky. They could have ended up with a much lower pick than they did. And if they win 8 games again, they're not guaranteed to get this high of a pick, and they may be in an even worse position than they were last time around. This is why I am pounding the table for them to do whatever they have to do to get that quarterback, because they may not have another chance. This might be it.
Yeah. And if you look at like the remaining free agents out there, and I'm just going to name a few that even make sense, like Ryan Tannehill's out there. No, thank you. Joe Flacco, not happening. Trevor Siemian. Like, I mean, like,
might as well bring back Kyle Sloter in that rate. Call him out of the media.
like AJ McCarron, like there's really no big names left. They're all gone. Teddy Bridgewater, but didn't he retire and become a coach?
He's
retired.
Okay,
Look,
so I mean, there's
Karen's
really
in the
nothing left.
UFL.
And like for me, and I know we've talked about this in the group chat with like Bo Nix and whether the coaching staff wants him and whatnot. I don't have a problem with Denver taking a quarterback. My issue is that Bo Nix at 12, I think, is too high. I think Denver trades back in the first, still gets Bo Nix and gets a second round pick.
Well, so then gambling if he's going to be there though.
But
I just because like again, and we've talked about this before. Sorry, Cam. Like JJ McCarthy is like the guy that everyone's talking about, the guy that everyone wants. I don't think we have enough draft capital to go get him. I think he's going to be drafted high enough that we can't get there.
That's certainly a solution, but and I think the fact that Atlanta went Kirk Cousins and Justin Fields has no market. Also, with this, let's just go with the window that the Giants will roll with Daniel Jones, which I'm kind of expecting they will. They roll with Daniel Jones and the Drew Lock. You're really only looking at, I mean, obviously the Bears are probably going to draft Caleb Williams. What they do with Justin Fields, that remains to be seen. But they'll probably take Caleb Williams. The Commanders are likely going to be taking Jaden Daniels when you look in who they signed, because they signed Marcus Mariota. So it seems pretty easy to kind of connect the dots there. That Jaden Daniels seems like a lock for the Commanders. Then it gets kind of interesting with the New England Patriots, because the Minnesota Vikings, and I think there is a scenario, and I'm telling you right now, if we're going to be on this podcast talking about connections, I'm telling you right now.
Only fit the Texas one.
I think that the J.J. McCarthy, this is my personal opinion, I think the J.J. McCarthy Minnesota Vikings stuff is a smokescreen. I don't think that J.J. McCarthy is actually a Minnesota Viking when all is said and done. I personally believe that the Minnesota Vikings trade up to 3 if they do, or Drake May falls to them. I think they take Drake May. If we're in the business of really talking about reunions, it's worth mentioning this point maybe for the first time. But do you happen to know who one of, if not one of the coaches that Drake May had in high school was?
Mike Shanahan,
Josh McCown.
So I think that I think if there is a window for them to get a guy like a Drake May, and stylistically, you're gonna hear me say that word a lot. Sam Darnold and Drake May is actually a pretty dang good pairing versus maybe like a JJ McCarthy and a Sam Darnold. So I think we're looking at the Minnesota Vikings really falling in love with a Drake May and not necessarily a JJ McCarthy. Not saying JJ McCarthy still to your idea that he's going to go within maybe the top 6. But like, I think the Minnesota Vikings are really the biggest worry right now for the Denver Broncos in terms of the JJ McCarthy sweepstakes. So if you want to be certain, trade to 8, maybe trade to 9, trade to 8, and go get JJ McCarthy or whoever it is that you fall in love with.
And if you're the Patriots, man, they did sign Jacoby Brissett. Jacoby Brissett could start the whole season for you in theory. He almost did it for the Browns in 2022. So why not, man? If you're going to punt on quarterback for 1 year, or maybe wait and see if one of these second rounders like a Michael Penix or Bo Nix, if he goes down that far, spoiler, I don't think he does, but maybe a Michael Penix or a Spencer Rattler if you're New England, and then just roll things out with Jacoby to begin the year. And I think New England could be a premium trade down candidate, and the Vikings could be that team that comes up, which would open a team like maybe the New York Giants at 6 to trade down with the Broncos, maybe the Atlanta Falcons at 8. it all depends on how the Giants feel about their quarterback situation. Are they really going to draft a quarterback, or are they going to roll with Danny Dimes and Drew Lock?
I mean, I still think that the first three, the Bears, the Commanders, and the Patriots, all take quarterbacks. I still think it's going to be Williams, May, and Jaden Daniels. One of those, like one of those two, will go second and third. But then, I mean, after that, you've got Cardinals. Pretty sure they're going to go Marvin Harrison Jr. Chargers don't need a quarterback. The Giants might move up, maybe. The Titans won't with Will Levis. Falcons have Kirk Cousins. Bears already took a quarterback. Jets have Aaron Rodgers. I mean, you're battling it out between like the Giants, the Vikings, and the Broncos at that point for who's going to move up and go get a quarterback.
And if you're talking about the person who's most desperate, it's the Broncos. By the way, some breaking news here. Adam Troutman is re-signing with the Denver Broncos. He will be back.
Okay. I might need to dip out of here, guys. I got to get that video out for Syndicate.
Yeah, so.
Okay, we're going to close it down anyway, so go have fun.
Cool. Yep. Later, boys.
Something for somebody else and not us.
All right. Cheers. Check out my video on Syndicate here in about 10-15 minutes.
Yeah, so they re-signed Adam Troutman. But
that is
absolute booty cheeks.
That's what that is.
I got to do what you got to do. But, so real quick, though, like with your Patriots thing, I will say the thing that makes the Patriots fascinating to a degree is all during the Bill Belichick era, they've always accumulated picks, right? They've always accumulated picks. They've always traded, back. They've always, accumulated a lot of capital. So if Belichick was there, they probably would, right? They probably would. They probably would trade back. But will they do that again, right? Like, will they do that again? I don't know. So now that there's a new regime there, you're kind of left with the uncertainty, and the expectation has been the fact they signed Brissett, which had been an expectation. I will say this, had been an expectation that they would sign him. They would draft a quarterback at 3. Now the question just becomes if it's the JJ McCarthy narrative, which is something that has been really popular, not just for the Vikings, but that's been talked about for the Patriots, is that they take JJ McCarthy. Right? You're still, I think at that point, you're talking about, do the Broncos trade back, or is there actually a scenario where Drake May falls and now you're back to a bidding war with the Minnesota Vikings? I can't really think after the whole Darnold stuff, whether we can talk about bidding war. I would have to think that they probably wouldn't want to be in another bidding war for something like that. So my guess is that's where the whole Bo Nix thing comes into play again.
Yeah, and then there's always the option, and this is one that's been talked about. You look at Sam Howell maybe as that person you bring in. You could probably trade a 5th or 6th for him.
Do you have 3 5th?
Yeah, I mean you're looking at like $985,000 for a cap hit. I mean it's nothing big, but at the same time, is Sam Howell really who you want to go after? Do you want to keep that draft capital? I still think they just roll with Stidham. I mean, I know that the word coming out of Dove Valley was we're going to be getting a veteran quarterback, but at this point, do you have to? Like, why?
Yeah, well, and we broke it all down. You look at the weapons or the options. I mean, it's not a bad option to roll with Stidham, right? And especially in this whole developmental stage, for Sean, like it's not a bad idea to roll with Stidham, and then to really bring in a guy, right? But like to the Sam Howell stuff, like we talked about it before we hit the record button. Sam Howell is such a, I don't want to say polarizing, but he's interesting because he doesn't cost a lot per se, but you're giving up capital again, right? You're giving up capital again. And do the Broncos, in a team that is trying to acquire capital, do they want to trade one of those 5ths for a guy like Sam Howell, right? Right. And I mean, and even then, I feel like because of how good Howell played, I I don't know. Like, I just don't know how Sean Payton feels about him. You know, the play style and everything, the way he plays is to a certain extent like Baker Mayfield, which I know that he does love, you know, Baker Mayfield. I just don't know where Howell falls in line with that. Because if you're acquiring Howell, I almost wonder too, you even have to have the conversation of, do we like the quarterback prospects in this class more than a Sam Howell or a Justin Fields? That's really kind of like where it ultimately is for me, is like, and I mean, obviously I took a little bit of a deeper dive on this class a little bit, but like, I will say from my perspective, I like this quarterback class a lot more, you know, than Sam Howell. And let's not forget, Sam Howell was a part of a class that had Kenny Pickett, Sam Howell, Desmond Ridder, Malik Willis. So it's like you know, I just it's a curious one, and we might as well bring in the other elephant in the room in terms of trading capital, and that would be Justin Fields. The difference between Fields that actually makes it worse is you are trading capital, but the moment you're actually trading for the moment you're trading for Fields, I have to assume, and that keyword assume. But again, you know, if there's one thing I didn't know about the whole Reacher series, assumptions kill. Anyway, if you trade for Justin Fields, you have to at least figure out the Broncos are going to be wanting to pick up their 5th-year option, right? So if you pick up the 5th-year option for Fields, you may as well just commit to the guy. Like, you may as well just commit to the guy, build around him, build your offense around Justin Fields, make him your guy for the offense, you know. And I mean, I don't mind the fit overall with Sean. I don't like the idea of committing to a guy, giving up draft capital, picking up his 5th-year option. You literally would be rather okay of just sticking at 12, taking a Bo Nix, or, you know, and just doing the full rebuild. And necessarily does a Justin Fields fit with the whole rebuild? I don't think so.
Yeah, and Ben Albright was asked specifically, like, is there any interest from the Broncos in Justin Fields? And the answer was no. There is no interest from the Broncos in Justin Fields. And honestly, there's no interest from anybody in Justin Fields right now. Like, there is no market for him.
Isn't that amazing? Like, it truly feels like once, you know, Russell Wilson went to the Steelers, right? Because like a lot of people were kind of like maybe mentioning the Steelers as an option because of Arthur Smith. But like, the moment Russ went there, and then the Kirk Cousins stuff, the Kirk Cousins goes to Atlanta, everything just went out of whack because you knew the Patriots were probably going to be going quarterback. The Commanders were obviously going to be going quarterback. The Bears were likely going to end up going Caleb Williams. So the only fascinating one really before they went to go with Darnold was Minnesota, maybe, right? And Justin Jefferson, I think recently, you know, has spoken about, you know, maybe him wanting to maybe play with the Justin Fields or, you know, anything like that. Like he still likes Fields as a prospect. And, but like still though, like you're talking about his options being significantly dwindled, so much so that Albright has even mentioned him being a backup quarterback. You know, you trade him, but you trade him to, you know, a team like maybe the Indianapolis Colts, you know, with Shane Steichen, which I do like that fit. I like that fit a lot. Maybe even the Philadelphia Eagles too. Like you trade him over to the Philadelphia Eagles, and you know, and he has the opportunity to learn under you know, Jalen Hurts. I know that the Eagles too have been notorious for being really aggressive. And funny enough, he was with the Ohio State Buckeyes, but we know that there's a Georgia connection. And Fields was a former Georgia Bulldog before he went there. So I mean, I think it's another option, you know, for sure.
So one of the things that I want to bring up right before we get going, you know, we are talking about the number 12 pick. We're talking about first round, who might go in the first round, who Denver might take. A lot of people are settling on Bo Nix. There's also talk about Spencer Rattler in the third. There's talk about Michael Penix But one of the tweets that Ben Albright put out, and I know I quote Ben Albright a lot, but he does have inside knowledge, and he is right a lot of the time. Not all the time, but a lot of the time he is correct. But he was saying that the two most likely positions that Denver drafts at 12, unless they trade back, is corner and edge. So for me, yeah, like if they don't trade back at 12, the two most likely positions that they would pick at 12 are corner or edge.
Mm-hmm.
But if they trade back, it would be something else. That's why I keep bringing up, like, they might trade back to go get Bo Nix, because I don't know if they have enough to move up to get McCarthy. But if they don't move back and they pick at 12, there's still Nate Wiggins, which I would be fine with.
At 12.
At 12.
Yeah. The thing there, and you have to be really sold on a prospect. You have to be really sold on a prospect at corner to take him. And I'm not saying, McKinstry or, the other guy, the other Alabama corner, or even Quinyon Mitchell or Nate Wiggins. Like I'm not saying that they are like terrible prospects, but like the thing we have to keep in mind here is everything that we have been listening to and hearing from George Payton and Sean Payton is, one, they traded up. They traded up for Riley Moss. And speaking with them at the combine, the expectation is that they will, in fact, roll with Riley Moss as cornerback too. So if they do roll with Riley Moss possibly at cornerback too, that's at least how I'm assuming it. Is that corner just doesn't fit it for me. The only way that I'm really taking a corner is if it's like to the point of, like, I don't want to say at the Pat Surtain level, but I need it to be a safe pick. Like I need it to be a safe pick where I'm like 100% confident that if we don't get a McCarthy, if we don't get a Nix, if we don't get a May, taking a corner is perfectly fine with me. I think edge is certainly a way where I could possibly go with. Brock Bowers, to me, I saw David talks Broncos. Brock Bowers, to me, is a safe pick. The one that scares me, of course, is the one that scares me, of course, there is the Los Angeles Chargers actually reaching just a little bit and actually taking Brock Bowers with the Chargers. I also think, like back to the edge, Jared Verse is an option. I've seen him mentioned, a little bit too. Dallas Turner. Honestly, and this is a wild card here, but with the way things have been shaping out with the position, I think I am more okay possibly taking an offensive tackle, depending on what they do with Garrett Bowles. That's dependent upon what they do with Garrett Bowles, but taking a tackle at 12 or even a wide receiver at 12. I'm actually serious about that. Like, I really do kind of like the idea of maybe even taking a wide receiver at 12 if you're talking a safe pick. And if you're looking at it, maybe the safest positions to take in this class is probably offensive lineman, Brock Bowers, and wide receiver. If you're kind of looking at it, edge, I don't know. But Joe Alt is a name. I feel like he's going to be a name that, you're looking at it probably more from the top 6 perspective, because actually I have him mocked to the Los Angeles Chargers, but Joe Alt, Talis Fulaga is a name. Fatanu from Washington is another name. And Tario Mims, it would be possibly like a trade back, trade back scenario. But so I could see even offensive tackle being a solution. The one thing I will say is if you don't take a tackle at 12, this is an incredibly deep tackle class. So I think that, if you can build the trenches, or the way things are shaping up in the offseason, Mike, load up on the defense, because this is a heavy offensive draft. Load up on defense and try your hardest and draft nothing but skill players in this draft, because you're talking about maybe running back, right, with skill positions there, tight end possibly with skill positions there, obviously tackle position there, wide receiver and quarterback. Like if you were really kind of scripted, like this is the scenario where like as a draft, you could really build your quarterback, his roster. JC Latham is another one. But you could really build your roster from an offensive perspective in this draft. Now, ideally though, and this is the unfortunate thing, I need a second round pick. Like I really, really need a second round draft pick if we can. And maybe we don't actually trade for Sam Howell, but we use a couple of those fifths and maybe a player to move up into that second round. A little bit of a long-winded answer from me. Sorry, Mike.
No, it's all good. It's we're all just kind of guessing at who they're going to take because we have no idea. My biggest concern though is Bo Nix at 12. I don't have a problem with Bo Nix, but 12 seems high.
Yeah. It just goes back to the same conversation of we may not like Bo Nix at 12, but if Sean Payton and George Payton love Bo Nix, right? That's the key phrase. Love Bo Nix at 12. Just take him at 12. Just take him at 12.
He got that video out fast. I just had the notification pop.
I will say, I want to talk on something briefly that you did mention a couple minutes ago. If it rarely does work sometimes, but if there is a draft to trade back and take your quarterback just a few spots, this would be the class to do it. So if you do trade back and take Bo Nix, that would be the perfect quarterback scenario, because then you're talking about acquiring capital, a team is, then coming up, possibly maybe even giving you a first, depending on who that player is. So you're really talking about a scenario where you may end up with 2 first-round picks, Bo Nix, the opportunity to really build your roster, right? So it's just like in the perfect trade back, take your quarterback scenario, that is definitely the ideal one. But again, like it still falls back on if you love Bo Nix, right? Even on a trade back scenario, if you love Bo Nix, just take him at 12.
I mean, yeah, but at the same time, you still do have to worry about those contracts. Like I know it's at 12, but at the same time, like the lower in the first round you take him, the less money you got to pay him, right? Like
yeah, it is absolutely.
I mean, I know it's not like rookie contracts used to be, where it was like an $80 million difference, but you still want to try to save that money. And I know that Denver has a lot of cap room right now, but I have to believe that with the lack of movement they had in the first round of free agency, they have to be building up that much cap space for going in on the second round, right? Like you have to think there's something going on. You don't just build up that much cap space and then sit on it. Like that's not a thing.
Yeah, if there's one thing we know about Sean Payton, he's like Jason Bourne. He operates in silence. Like
we know, Glenn. As long you're way behind.
So let's I want to circle. I know we're finishing up, but since we touched on some of the positions, what are some positions for you, Mike, that you feel like the Broncos absolutely need to address as far as some positions right now? So Josie Jewell's gone, right? Jewell's gone.
Yes. That was my top one, was inside linebacker. Like we thought it was going to be Drew Sanders, but they're moving him out to edge, which
that's what we think.
Again, I don't really agree with. So then you think it's Jonas Griffith at inside linebacker now, but you're telling me there's no better options at inside linebacker than Jonas Griffith? And nothing against Jonas Griffith. He's been injured enough that I don't really know how well he can do at that position. But you're telling me, just looking at the names of inside linebackers that are available, that there's nobody we could bring in?
Well, that's the other part of it too, is like to a certain extent, like the quarterback discussion. It's like, is there another linebacker that the Broncos. I'm not okay. I'm kidding. Is there another Texas Longhorn linebacker that's out there in the market that we want to pair?
Yeah, there we go. Bring in some more 2018 Longhorns.
Right, exactly. No, I'm kidding. But there are some very, very interesting and young names that are on the market, and really good names. Isaiah Simmons. The thing with Isaiah Simmons there, unfortunately, is we know exactly what happened. With Vance Joseph in Arizona between Isaiah Simmons and him. But some fascinating names. You got Simmons. Devin White is available. Levante David re-signed.
I got it. Let me pull him up. I got it right here. Inside linebacker available. Devin White, Eric Kendricks. That's an interesting name. Kind of old though. 32 for inside linebackers. A little old. Devin Bush, Denzel Perryman. Shaq Leonard, Quan Alexander. That's about it for good players. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I had the list in front of me.
No, you're good. But I think that's why I'm looking at some of those young players, because it's like Cody Barton's available. Devin White is available. He's more of a pipe dream, if you will. But who knows with the way that these contracts are being handed out? Maybe the Broncos luck out and they can actually sign into like a 2-year, $15 million contract or something, so Devin White is certainly out there. The guy I was kind of, name dropping him a little bit on social media and everything, but Akeem Davis Gaither is a fascinating one that I was kind of looking at with the free agency market. Akeem Davis Gaither is a
dude.
linebacker.
You put that video out fast.
Yep, it's out.
But yeah, Akeem Davis Gaither is a fun one that I'm looking at in that linebacker market. He was part of a crowded Bengals room with Logan Wilson and the other linebacker that they drafted in that same draft. They drafted 3 linebackers in that draft. Akeem Davis Gaither was one of them. But we're talking a very, very athletic linebacker. Can be used in space. So I like his youth. I think he's 25 years old, 25, 26 years old. So I really like the idea of kind of taking that risk again. And, the low risk, high reward signing like that for like a 25-year-old. Isaiah Simmons would fit the bill. You just don't know if it's going to work with, Vance Joseph, as we alluded to.
So, Gage, Cam brought up the point of what positions of need for the Broncos. I said inside linebacker. So that's what we were talking about.
Cool. I would definitely say inside linebacker is the top one if they do indeed move Drew Sanders to edge. Like, all indications are heading towards right now based on what George Payton has said. So I do think inside linebacker, the guy that I wanted, Willie Gay, is no longer on the market. He was signed by the New Orleans Saints to a 1-year, $5 million deal. If that's all that he was going for, I'm really pissed the Denver Broncos didn't offer him a deal, to be honest.
Question: who is Crab Legs?
Funny enough, breaking news actually just happened on Mr. Crab Legs. He just signed with the Cleveland Browns.
Okay, but who is it?
Jameis Winston.
Thank you. I was like, who is Crab Legs?
He stole some crab legs when he was in college.
Yeah. Okay, I remember him like eating a W. And stupidest thing I've ever seen. That was the dumbest thing. We're gonna eat that W. Shut up, Jameis. Idiot.
I will say I would just bring him in just for the simple workout videos we can get. Just the simple workout videos.
That's why you get Sam Hartman. Could you imagine the videos and the memes you could get with Hartman on the roster?
Could you imagine how many more we could get if he was in the UFL where he belongs?
So going with what Cam was saying, any other positions in need?
I think corner is a position they'll target, not cornerback too. Obviously, I was just pumping up Riley Moss, but I think that corner is a need from the standpoint of you can never have too many corners, and we're talking about a team that lost Fabian Moreau, right? Like we is possibly losing Fabian Moreau, so having some depth there to that room, a veteran, if you will, So I think that, would be really nice. Bringing in, if another defensive lineman, I think is not out of the realm of question. We brought up a few names earlier in the show, Sebastian Day, DJ Reader. See, it agrees with me. And I will just, I'll throw this out there just because it's, it's certainly an option, and I've been banging the table a little bit even on this one too, but wide receiver is another one. That I wouldn't be surprised if they dip their toes in, maybe on the cheap young option. Like, if we're going to talk about reclamation projects, we're going to talk about possibly bringing him in the building. Laviska Shenault.
I knew you were going to say that.
I bombed that one.
I knew you were going to say Laviska. That's hilarious.
Well, I mean, think about it. He had the Urban Meyer treatment at Jacksonville. He literally goes to Carolina, and and he really needs a stable offensive coordinator to work with him. I'm not touching Chase Claypool with a 10-foot pole. The guy's an off-field problem. But
for TikTok, it would be great.
Yeah, he and Juju Smith-Schuster would literally make the greatest TikToks.
Could you imagine Chase Claypool, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Sam Hartman? Our TikTok would be fantastic.
Broncos social media game with rival the Chargers, man. But anyway, no, man. In all seriousness, no. Go ahead. Sorry, we completely cut off Cam.
Well, I was just gonna say, Mark wants to know if there's any updates on new uniforms. There's not, but if they really were smart about it, they would have cut Justin Simmons, and then the next day been like, new uniforms.
True.
Yeah, I will say.
We're even going to get him now, because you would think they'd come by the draft, because we don't want our new, hopefully franchise quarterback standing up there holding the old jerseys.
I will say though, if you're reading somewhat of the tea leaves and what's going on at the team store, we might be getting new uniforms, and maybe they're just running a store website sale or something. But custom jerseys, I think, are going for like $100 right now. And obviously,
drop them puppies to 25. I'm all in, because $100 is still woohoo.
But again, maybe it's just the off-season sale and everything.
Fat guy like me, I need some extra cloth in there. So
yeah, you rock the XXXXL, quite well.
I try. It's all down there. So we talked wide receiver, we talked inside linebacker. I think that Roach being on the defensive line kind of takes that away for the most part. I mean, you still want to sign others, but I think for the most part that relieves some issues we had on the interior defensive line. Corner, I think we can make work with Riley Moss in there. Again, we should probably add somebody else. Safety, I think we're fine. Running back is another one.
Yep.
I know that we have Javonte. I know that we have McLaughlin. But honestly, and I was pissed that we weren't even in the talk for Saquon Barkley, because woohoo, that would have been fun.
It would have, but it's not conducive to what this team's trying to do. This team's trying to get rid of expensive deals.
Right.
I just want the fun player, man.
I just want the fun player. I don't even care anymore. Do we even have any good running backs left?
Well,
hold on.
I will say though, there are some interesting names, to say the least. I will say
Zeke.
I think that, well, no, I would sign Ezekiel Elliott to play center. That's kind of like what I would do. As far as some options, I mean, J.K. Dobbins to me is one of the fascinating ones. We're talking about a guy who has multiple injuries, but I mean, he's such a talented running back. That if he was healthy, he wouldn't be on the market. So, but another guy too. Let's look at Aaron Jones's counterpart. Let's go look at like AJ Dillon. or maybe making a reunion of some sorts with Latavius Murray, with Sean Payton. So there's not a lot out there by any means. And
what about Clyde Edwards-Helaire or Cam Akers?
I'd rather Akers, but here's the thing with Dobbins as well as Akers. Dobbins had an ACL, and now he's not coming off of an Achilles. And you know what? That's why I gagged at AJ Dillon, because the dude's vision is god awful. He's one of the worst running backs in the NFL, if I'm being completely honest.
Yeah. Well,
I don't want anything to do with AJ Dillon.
And again, I was just kind of looking at strictly names, but if you're going to take a risk with injury incentives, I might consider taking a risk on J.K. Dobbins. But I will admittedly say that all along, I really didn't want them to spend money in the running back market for a back.
Agreed.
I wanted them to go to the draft and draft, a Dylan Laube. Yes, Glenn, we mentioned Dylan Laube when you weren't here. Isaac Guriendo from Louisville, Jalen Wright from Tennessee. Blake Corum. He's got a few tread on his tires, but Blake Corum, try and take him so he's not back with Jim Harbaugh, right? I think Dylan Johnson's an interesting one, but boy, those injuries, man, that injury he sustained with the national championship or even the playoffs, it's a really unfortunate situation, but he's interesting. If you want to talk about downhill running backs, Braylon Allen is the one I've been kind of big on stumping for. Frank Gore Jr. is in this running back class as well. So I think that there's absolutely, if you wanted to ask me, go draft one. And, and also,
sorry, I was going to say, have you ever seen The Longest Yard, the new one with Adam Sandler and like Kevin Nash, Goldberg, and all those guys?
Mm-hmm.
Ever seen them? When he typed that, all I could see was that Kevin Nash going, ah! That's AJ Dillon running to the line. Ah!
Yeah,
that's all that popped into my head.
But, I think the Broncos should draft a running back almost every single year. That's really any team. Even if you have an established guy in the building, keep adding young talent, because running back is so volatile. You could risk losing your guy so early, and you need to replace that depth. You might as well accumulate that depth in the offseason.
Yeah, and as much as Broncos country ourselves and everything else.
I poked your head in when I screamed. Like, are you okay? Yeah, I'm good.
Well, and the thing is, like, as much as Broncos country loves him and they adore him, he did have a hard 2023. But this is going to be a hard year for Javonte Williams. Like, he really needs to bounce back. Because I'll be honest. If you're talking about possibly players who are a surprise cut candidate, depending on what they do with running back, either in the draft, high draft pick or whatever, I hate to say it, but Javonte Williams could be a surprise cut depending on how aggressive the Broncos do get at running back in the draft.
I agree.
How about them Cowboys? Listen, people can hate George Payton all they want, but you know one thing he's not? Jerry Jones. So it's fine.
Neither is Sean Payton.
Yep.
Facts. And
Cowboys, man, they've got a lot of holes on their roster. They're going to be in some trouble this year.
They didn't do anything. It's embarrassing. I was going to look up the teams. Who are the biggest free agency teams? The Texans signed
Panthers
a crap ton
have
of
been
players.
on a spending spree.
Panthers signed a crap ton. Titans signed a crap ton. Which, by the way, the Panthers getting rid of Brian Burns. Like, how do you not get a first-round pick for him?
They could have gotten 2 from the Rams if they had taken that trade.
Welcome to the ownership of the Carolina
Listen,
Panthers.
I'm not hating on Josie Jewell at all.
Carolina Browns, that's appropriate.
Right? Like, I'm not hating on Josie Jewell at all, but Brian Burns, Josie Jewell. Come on.
Well,
like that, come on.
They do play different positions.
And Ejiro Evero is there.
Well, I know, but still, Brian Burns. Come on. Like people are all up in arms that Denver didn't take the 3rd and 5th for Jerry Jeudy, but nobody says anything about the Panthers not getting 2 first-round picks for Brian Burns.
I guarantee you, though, you ask Jerry Jeudy what situation he would rather be in right now, he would absolutely tell you, I want to be a Cleveland Brown, not a Carolina Panther. Which, like, and even for like our benefit, like as far as if they trade Cortland Sutton, like, so like the Panthers, funny enough, they acquired Deontay Johnson, right? Yep. Trade Cortland Sutton to the Pittsburgh Steelers. See if you can find a way to maybe get some capital, by trading him maybe to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like, see if you can, like ruffle some feathers, maybe get some trade value a little bit for Cortland Sutton, now that Deontay is there and obviously Russell Wilson is there. So it's just like, kind of kick the tires a little bit, maybe see, what the interest is possibly, but like, that's one of the reasons why whenever we try and successfully like pitch an idea, we don't want Cortland Sutton on the Carolina Panthers. We really don't. And in fact too, like the way that the Steelers orchestrated the trade would almost be to a certain extent how the Broncos would have to orchestrate it if they did trade with Carolina, because Carolina is so bare on draft capital that we wouldn't necessarily have to just give up Cortland Sutton. We would also have to fork over a pick because they suck at, their draft capital right now. They literally have nothing. So in this trade for Deontay, so like in this thing with Deontay Johnson, and like they acquired Johnson and a draft pick. So that's kind of like exactly what the Broncos are going to have to do with Sutton.
Oh, they got him for a 2nd and a 5th. He agreed to this. Brian Burns. I'm going through the Giants thing. They traded a 2nd and a 5th for Burns, and then Burns agreed to a new 5-year deal worth $150 million with 76 fully guaranteed. Woohoo! That's a
25-year-old.
There was one linebacker that I was rather upset that we didn't sign, and seeing what he signed for made me even more upset because we could have afforded that easily. Patrick Queen goes to the Steelers, 3-year, $41 million.
Yep.
We could have paid that.
Could have, but it's not smart business, in my opinion. This is what a rebuild is, man. You're not in the business of forking out those expensive free agent contracts. They're in the business of signing guys of the Malcolm Roach and the Brandon Jones caliber.
Yeah.
Well, and then you talked about Danielle Hunter. He just went to the Texans. 2-year, $49 million with a max value of 51. He got $48 million guaranteed.
Texans, man, are looking like AFC Championship game or bust next year. They really are.
And
they got Joe Mixon too.
And I'll tell you, if there is a model, maybe the Broncos are going to try and follow. Don't be surprised if the Broncos are following the Houston Texans model about maybe with what they currently had about a roster, tearing it down just a little bit, building it back up again. And once you actually hit on that quarterback, you're cooking with grease right there. And especially given with what we're seeing with the tea leaves, them not dipping their toes into this whole bridge quarterbacks in a situation when you already have them there and Jarrett Stidham. I think you're looking at the Broncos possibly of them using the Houston Texans as a model going forward. So I'm not saying this year, but don't be surprised if the Broncos are aggressive for a quarterback in this NFL draft. They trade up for a quarterback. Don't be surprised about that. But also don't be surprised if once they actually have the capital to do it, they pull a Houston Texans move and they actually trade back in to the first round and acquire another blue chipper in the first round. Not this draft, but in some future drafts because of the capital that they'll have. Because I'll tell you right now, the moment Sean Payton and that Walton Penner group, they have their quarterback, I will tell you right, and he's a good quarterback, it's over for the rest of the league. The amount of money that they have and cash flow and everything else, it's over for the rest of the league because of the amount of money that they can dish out to free agents year after year after year. No one's going to be able to compete with the Broncos at that.
Yep. Now, this is one of the teams that I actually think sneakily got better. Sneakily, is that a word? It is now. Sneakily got a little better. And by a little bit, I mean a lot better. Because I think that the best signing so far in free agency was Saquon Barkley to the Eagles. You have that caliber of running back on that team that runs
Basically,
like nobody's even there. Like they are the team as far as running backs go to be on. Like that's a dangerous team.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we'll see what they do at center, but
They just
they have some options at center. They do have Cam Jurgens, who they drafted in 2022 out
jealous.
of Nebraska. You know that Cam's gonna be tickled about that one. But yeah, man, Cam Jurgens was drafted to be the successor to Jason Kelsey. They're gonna probably have to figure out right guard because Jurgens was their starting right guard last year. But if they can
That's
figure
iffy
that
center.
out, I think they're gonna be okay.
Yeah, that's iffy center.
That's if he's center, yeah. Or they could go Jackson Powers Johnson.
And I'll tell you, not to pivot on the Broncos, but it's one of the reasons why, if I'm the Broncos, I'm trying maybe my hardest as much as I'm building this offense this year in the NFL draft. I really like the idea of maybe even building an offensive line if you can in this draft, like in this draft specifically. So like if you can go out and maybe get a tackle, double dip on a tackle lately or later, you're talking about a scenario where, or I should say a tackle that you can even move inside a guard, even like, because I like the Eagles model for anybody that is building an elite offensive line should be that model, because Landon Dickerson was a center at Alabama. They kicked him out to be a guard. Cam Jurgens, they was a pure center, like keyword pure center, who they kicked outside to be that right guard. And so they just keep building this great depth at the tackle position, this guard position. So if there's any way the Broncos can duplicate that particular model with this Texans model, you're talking about a really good and deep team on just the offensive line and possibly, even just the offense in general, because of it all is all predicated on that quarterback.
Yeah. Now there is one more thing that I want to bring up. Well, two things. One, Josh Jacobs is no longer in the AFC West. He can no longer have his greatest game against the Broncos because we're not going to see him at least for probably like 4 years because he is now on the Packers. But this is where it gets funny, right? Like they signed Josh Jacobs and then cut Aaron Jones after they asked him to take a pay cut. He said no. They let him go. He goes to the Vikings and signs for just a little bit more than what the Packers offered him.
That's funny.
Awesome. I love it.
And also Austin Eckler's out of the division too. So,
yep.
And out of conference, I should say. But yeah, I mean, I think if you're looking at it from the perspective, I think that it's interesting that I just want to know what the Green Bay Packers are doing, because it almost is like, to a certain extent, the free agency version of moving on from Aaron Rodgers. Like you literally have, replaced Aaron Jones with Josh Jacobs. Not saying it's a good decision, right? Good or bad decision. It's just like you've literally now, okay, you went with Jordan Love. He played amazing this year, and finally had a running game. It looked great. You
Aaron Jones crushed it in the playoffs.
You're right. He played really, really well. And you cut ties with them. And again, like just to a certain extent, like we're also talking about a position that is easily replaced. It's just interesting that they didn't go to the draft for that. They didn't go to the draft for, someone like that. And so maybe they feel like an A.J. Dillon is easily replaceable by a hometown, draft pick, if you will, from Wisconsin named Braylon Allen. I don't know. But I just think that it's interesting that they literally have like just wipe that running back room clean.
Now, the last thing that I want to talk about, and it's going to end on a Chargers note because Bill's the biggest Chargers fan ever.
He is.
But we talk about we talk about a running back leaving the AFC West to then talk about the Raiders, who bring in Christian Wilkins. 4 years, $110 million contract, gets $84 million guaranteed. And that is pairing him up with Max Crosby on the Raiders. that is somewhat of a terrifying signing.
Just a little bit. Yeah.
Because now you've got Chris Jones with the Chiefs, who just resigned for huge bucks. And now you've got that pass rushing duo in Las Vegas.
Yeah, that's nasty.
Yeah.
On paper, it's looking good, but knowing the Raiders, they're always going to find a way to fuck it up somehow.
Yeah, and I don't want to. Again, Tom Telesco. I mean, we don't know what the future holds for him long term, but you at least got to give him credit for doing what Max Crosby has been dying for, and that is an interior presence on that line, and that being Christian Wilkins. But yeah, it's a scary thing, but also I think it's one of the reasons why the Broncos need to really beef up their trenches, and not. I don't mean that from the. I really don't mean that from the defensive line perspective necessarily. I really mean it from the offensive line perspective, because you will have to face a Christian Wilkins, right? You will have to possibly face a Christian Wilkins, and maybe even with what you're going to be possibly facing with the AFC West. And by the way, speaking of the AFC West, subtle note, something to monitor. I think that the Chargers have a lot of decisions to make, and the moves that we saw just even in the first 2 days, free agency actually opens tomorrow. So everything that we saw for moves, either it's going to be quiet, or we get a chance to see some moves that are either flying under the radar, or it's just all hell's going to break loose. One more time again with free agency opening.
Yep.
When are
you
ready?
Guys going to 2 o'clock Mountain Time tomorrow.
When are you guys going to do a live mock draft? We're waiting on Bill so he can know no one and just randomly pick players. That's what we're waiting for. No, I don't know.
We'll get one done at some point before the draft.
Yeah, we could talk about that. And then don't forget, we are doing a live stream of the neighborhood, and I hope that both of you join. I hope that everybody joins, because it would be fun. We're going to do a live stream of the first round of the draft when that happens. So
I'll be doing some stuff for Syndicate, but I'll pop in whenever the Broncos make their
No, not
my main channel.
Well,
no.
I will say I will be out. I am actually traveling to Nebraska that weekend for the spring game. We leave Thursday.
Wow.
Because I like Nebraska football, and because there's a certain
we
quarterback.
Don't want you in this state.
And because there is a certain quarterback. Yes, David talks Broncos. There is a quarterback by the name of Dylan Raiola who will beat Shedeur Sanders this year.
Your Nebraska visitors pass has been revoked. You can't come here.
I mean, Dylan Raiola will beat Shedeur Sanders in Lincoln. We have a revival going on with the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Nebraska's back. Go Huskers. Go Big Red. We're back, baby. We are no longer living in 1990s anymore. We are back.
We like the 1990s, Cam. We won national championships in the 90s, Cam.
I know, but like I'm just saying, if there's one thing that the Broncos fandom and my fandom of the Huskers has taught me, we love nostalgia. We love living in the past. I mean, you got the Super Bowl 50, you got the Super Bowls of the Super Bowl 32 and Super Bowl 33, and not to mention, I mean, it really fits well with my narrative that if the Broncos miss out on a quarterback, that Dylan Raiola will be their quarterback in a couple of years. Not Ark Manning, but Dylan Raiola will be their quarterback, for the Denver Broncos in, what is it, 2027 is what it would be? Not Shedeur Sanders, because that Shedeur is shut.
Hold on, I'm looking at.
If they don't get it right till 2027, this fan base is going to, oh my God.
I'm looking up the last time the Colorado Buffs won the national championship.
I want to say it was 1991.
That's a lot of scrolling. Hold on. Not that year, 1990. Congratulations. You won one.
Yep. Yay.
Yeah. All right. Any last breaking news announcements? Anything else you guys want to cover before we break? It's been like a 2-hour episode. It's been awesome.
It's been a great show, man.
It's been
except for Cam, or not Cam, except for Gage, because he just dips.
Yeah.
Technically it's a 2-hour episode because he was only gone for like 30 minutes.
I guess. Anything else? We good?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, this is great.
Make sure, before we even talk about the network, make sure you go over and check out Gage's page, Broncos Syndicate. He puts out videos all the time. They are fantastic. I love them. That's usually where I get my topics from because I don't do enough research to make my own. I'm just kidding.
That explains a lot,
but no,
actually.
Make sure you go check out his page. He has a lot of amazing information there, lots of amazing videos. So check that out. And also check out the MHRT Network. Again, the one and only fan-led, Broncos-based podcasting network. The only one. Everybody else is either media or professionals. Nope. We're just a bunch of idiots that come in here and talk about the Broncos and have fun. That's, well, at least two of us are idiots. Gage isn't an idiot.
And every once in a while, actually have a smart football take.
Yes. Every once in a
try.
while. Maybe like one good take per show.
Bill, on the other hand,
I don't even know about per show. Maybe like per month.
Now, Bill, on the other hand, that's Bill. On the other hand,
if you want to hit like
Bill
spot
cooks
on
with
100%
grease every week, man.
If you want to hit 100% spot on like predictions, you go check out Bill's show.
Yeah,
because he is spot on every time.
If you want a free comedy show, tune into Bronco Bill on Fridays.
Bill needs some work, but I still love him. Yeah, that's why I always pull up this little tidbit right there. Pow! All right, but yeah, make sure you go check out every show on the MHRT Network. We have a bunch. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Neighborhood comes back for the draft. If the Avalanche make the playoffs, we'll be doing the neighborhood then. And we do all the Broncos games. So make sure you check those out. The best way you can support the network and any show on it is to give us a thumbs up. The thumbs up is free. It's easy. It takes about 0.2 seconds. Double thumbs up, get your fireworks. Boom. So make sure you go click on the MHRT Network, subscribe, share it with your friends, hit that thumbs up. We would greatly appreciate it. We love the Broncos. We love Broncos country. I'm somewhat of a Sean Payton hater, but I'm getting there. Cam's got to get over his Justin Simmons hating, but he'll get there. It's okay. We love you guys. Peace.
Fast lane when I pass in the street. Bag of money in the passenger seat. Simcoe's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast's racking up the flame out.